Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be doing a discussion on AI. The question being, is putting AI on chain a solution or just moving the problem to a new domain? We'll spend the first couple minutes just, doing a quick round of introductions, and then we'll just dive straight into the questions.
Happy to get started. I'm Daniel. I work at the Celo Foundation. I'm the AI lead as of the last month, and my background is in design, actually, service design and user research. And I have always been working on community and DevRel, and I'm now on this role trying to create an AI ecosystem for the Celo protocol, and kind of like exploring the very first use cases for agents on a chain that can be unique and aligned with what we do at Celo. That's me.
Hello everyone, my name is Lukas. I'm part of the founding team of Nillion. What is Nillion? Nillion is a blind computation network, which basically means a network that enables you to store and compute on very sensitive, very personal information, high value data as we describe it. The way we do that is we utilize privacy enhancing technologies. So they're cryptography-based technologies like MPC and FHE, but there are also hardware-based solutions like trusted execution environments. And Nillion's vision is to essentially democratize access to these technologies and enable you to orchestrate between these different technologies. We are currently in testnet heading towards mainnet, and it's very exciting to see a plethora of teams from AI agents to DeFi, and many other teams building on our network as of today already.
Nice, 0GM everyone. I was feeling under the weather yesterday, so you see Jake's photo up there, and thanks Jake for stepping in, but I was able to recover. So Michael, co-founder and CEO of 0G, and 0G is the largest AI layer 1. We've basically built ultra-performant layer 1 chain, and on top of that we have a decentralized storage solution, as well as compute, where we've already released inference, fully decentralized, permissionless, verifiable inference, and soon fine-tuning as well. So very excited about that. And then we've also built a service marketplace. On top of that, it's our version of an app store, essentially. More than 300 projects building on top of us. Have raised more than 300 million, have a large ecosystem fund as well of 88.88 million. So excited to work with the best builders.
Cool. My name is Veronica. I lead BD at Eclipse. Eclipse is a Solana virtual machine layer 2 on ETH. Easiest way to explain that is Solana on ETH, right? For a user, the experience is exactly the same as on Solana. Think fast transactions, cheap fees, whilst leveraging ETH as the native currency. So we really are looking to combine the best of both worlds. We recently went live on mainnet about 3.5 months ago, and have been able to stress test the chain with, I think, a peak of about 9,000 TPS of non-vote TPS in production. So that's been really great. Happy to cover a little more later. Is Jake dialing in? Okay. Cool. So we'll start off our questions. First question. So blockchain networks often face challenges with scalability. Do you think AI solutions that operate on-chain will exacerbate these issues, or could the decentralization of AI itself offer a solution for scalability?
Happy to start here. So I think actually what's helpful for this is to break down what decentralized AI is and the different layers of the stack, because I think all of them are having their own scalability challenges. So there's a compute layer. The vision of decentralized AI here is to tap into underutilized capacity, so GPUs and commodity hardware to improve economics, more flexible processing, better economics. The second layer is the data layer. The data layer, specifically in this context, I would say, is all about tapping into underutilized data. So McKinsey said there is $3 trillion out there sitting with enterprise and sitting with users, private sensitive data that is currently not utilized to train the latest generation of models. And decentralized AI here is essentially evaluating how we can tap into that information, and next to that, how can we establish attribution mechanisms to enable users to benefit from sharing their data. Then we have obviously the model layer, and on the model layer you can break it down into training and inference. So on the training side, decentralized AI is evaluating how we can potentially crowdsource the training of models in return for the benefit of collective model ownership, where people essentially contribute their hardware resources and train a model globally in a decentralized manner. And last but not least is the inference layer, as I said, on the model side, where it's about running these models without having a single point of failure or without having a trust assumption that is centralized, right? In the context of trusting one individual or one company with all of your information that you sent without any privacy. So those are the different layers. Now, in terms of scalability, I think usually when we evaluate crypto scalability in the context of crypto AI, it happens to be the inference layer, I think, that people talk most about, but obviously training as well. On the inference side, I would say it is possible today to have scalable solutions. Specifically, if you look at hardware solutions, trust execution environments that enable you to run these models with relatively little overhead, whilst at the same time protecting privacy and enabling verifiability. On the training side, I would say the challenge is the communication overhead. So if you have a lot of different GPUs working together in training a model, there needs to be a lot of syncs and a lot of communication between those nodes to update gradients and the likes, and that comes with challenges. But also there, the industry is heading in an interesting direction with exciting improvements over the last weeks and months when it comes to training these models in distributed form. So to summarize, I would say we have seen a lot of improvements over the last months. There's a lot of work to do, specifically on the cryptography side, but I would say we're heading in the right direction to make these things actually viable.
Yeah, maybe I'll go next. From a zero-G infrastructure standpoint, we're removing all barriers so that there's no performance difference between centralized versus decentralized infrastructure. So I'll give some examples on that. On the storage side, we've tested the throughput at about 2 gigabytes per second, which is the fastest ever recorded in decentralized storage. So that basically means that if you interact with Google Drive versus zero-G storage, it's the same experience at this point. On the layer 1 side, we're working towards essentially having infinite scalability is what we're calling it. So this idea of infinite TPS, a self-scaling system with ultra low latency at the same time. Usually those two things don't go hand in hand with a layer 1, because if you have a 3-hop consensus and you have speed of light and you have a server, let's say in the US and China, then you get to about 100 milliseconds or so in latency. That's like the fastest you could essentially go towards. Now, how do you go to 50 milliseconds, 10 milliseconds, and so on? So you need to have geographic synchronization and consensus. But basically, these types of technologies then enable to remove any of the barriers. And then similar to what Lukas said on the inference side, we use TE for the inferencing. So basically, there's no overhead to centralized solutions. So performance should not be a barrier to building in a decentralized fashion. So that's basically what we're working towards.
Yeah, I'm going to go and answer your question. I think that, yes, some blockchains are going to break. I'm really glad that we are building these super performant layer 1s, but we are going to test the current blockchains with these agents and with more AI solutions as we build them. And I'm here for it. Honestly, we'll have to see how legacy blockchains can respond to them and what type of scaling solutions we need to come up with to keep up. I think that for that to happen, real use cases will need to come on board, and that for me is the question. Do we actually have meaningful use for this type of a scale?
Cool.
Hey.
I will put you in the hot seat, right? Quick introduction, and question is around, do you think that AI solutions that operate on-chain will remove scalability issues with blockchains or just make it worse?
Okay, so first, sorry, thanks for having me. Sorry I'm late, my plane was like super late. Jake Brukhman from CoinFund, 32-person crypto-focused firm based in Miami, New York, Boston. Did a lot of work in decentralized AI last 3 years or so. And sorry, and your question is again that whether AI will make scalability worse?
Do they help with blockchain scalability or make the issue worse?
I think they help with blockchain scalability because AI agents, let's say, are poised to create a lot of transactions. And a lot of transactions will create a lot of demand for scalability.
I will move on to the second question. As AI relies heavily on data for training models, how do you balance the need for large data sets with blockchain's core principle of decentralization and privacy? Is there a risk of sacrificing privacy for AI efficiency when integrating AI solutions?
Kind of answer that question. Basically, there's no trade-off. If you have an ultra-performant decentralized storage system, then anything's possible in a decentralized way. And so if it's private data, you can use multiple forms. There's MPC, there's FHE, which is much slower. There's just basic encryption as well. So depending on what form you want to use, there's different trade-offs at the moment. I look forward to a world where FHE is 1,000,000 times more performant and then can actually be used in production. Or MPC, either one are both super exciting to basically protect private data so that we can do things like have multiple companies that are competing with each other actually share data and then benefit together.
Yeah, I can just build on that. So, I mean, our take generally is that decentralized AI, certainly in the inference layer, is not really commercially viable without privacy, because actually the trust assumptions are strictly worse. If you send your prompt to a random node operator sitting in the basement and running the model versus sending it to OpenAI. But that's why privacy solutions, as you touched on, exist, right? So the hardware-based solutions and cryptography-based solutions, our position is quite clear. I think that the end game needs to be cryptography-based. Ideally, the ability to distribute trust across end parties. So you don't have to trust one hardware, you don't have to trust one individual. You can distribute the trust, but as Michael said, in the short term, certainly when it comes to bigger models, we are not there yet when it comes to efficiency. And that's why it's great to see that hardware-based solutions like TEs have made great progress. They enable you to achieve verifiability for attestations, whilst at the same time benefiting from privacy. With high levels of security risks, absolutely, right? We have seen side channel attacks, we have seen vulnerabilities and the likes. But in the short term, that is an efficient way of running big models, whilst nonetheless benefiting from privacy and verifiability. One thing that I'm very excited about is, and it's also something that we are building as a network, combining these different technologies, right? So Nillion is focused in building a network that enables you to tap into cryptography with MPC and FHE and the likes, but at the same time, trusted execution environments. And where it's really getting exciting is, what if you can actually run parts of a model under MPC of layers that are more secure and sensitive, and then the rest potentially in a TE, where you sort of can find the right balance of security and performance and modularize that configuration as you see best fit. Because every builder, every application has a different position on the trust spectrum and the security and performance spectrum. And our goal is to modularize that, and we are currently working with Meta on a paper essentially that finds new ways to do that, which is very exciting.
I think you guys covered it well. I think privacy of data and other primitives in AI will be, essential to building business models. Just to give another example to the couple you guys already mentioned, our company Bagel, for example, recently released frontier research called ZK LoRa. So LoRa is a way of fine-tuning LLMs. The way it works is you add sort of extra layers into the neural network. And what ZK LoRa allows people to do is to kind of retain those extra layers that are fine-tuned on proprietary data and sort of have the model be inferenced in a way where the data owner doesn't expose their weights, right? So it creates privacy, it creates a business model, and it's like super important core primitive.
Yeah, I agree, I'm aligned. I think that the future of blockchains is privacy. How we get there is going to take time, but I do believe that's the vision. I do love the idea of the open data in blockchains and public data in blockchains, and I think there's a lot of value for that, and there will be value for that. So I don't think all data needs to be private. Yeah, but in general, I'm aligned. I think, yeah, I'm thinking along those lines.
Cool. So we've touched around the topics of scalability and privacy as, two main issues that are blockers for bringing AI on chain. What are some other issues that you've been seeing through, your line of work, right? Building your projects and the likes.
I maybe just touch upon training in particular. Training is very hard to bring fully on chain. You've got very high data throughput requirements. Two, if it's across a distributed network, you have to figure out, well, how do I do batch training? How do I do asynchronous training? How do I make sure there's enough synchronization in the models? How do you make sure there's fault tolerance? So if a graphics card fails, you don't need to restart the training run. So there's a lot of fundamental research that's still happening in that area to actually go beyond, let's say, I think the current standard is maybe 10 billion parameters or so that's been trained decentralized in a decentralized fashion. I think Prime Intellect did that. But how do you get to 100 billion, 500 billion, trillion parameter type of models in the future? So that's still an open research question.
Yeah, I mean, just to build on that, it's true, but I think at the same time, there's very exciting progress. I mean, Jake, you're probably the best position to answer that, but there's the distro paper, there's demo paper, and others where actually some of your portfolio companies, I think, are Prime Intellect and the likes, found ways to actually train, pretty big models, 10 billion plus in a decentralized network, with just much more efficient synchronization than it was previously possible. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's more work to be done on that side. On the inference side, as I said before, I think some of the issues that we need to think about are security and cost, right? Where do we sit on the trade-off spectrum of performance, security, cost? And I'm extremely excited about the progress that obviously, as I said, hardware has made with TEs, but at the same time, even more excited about cryptography-based improvements, right? As I said, we have published papers just recently with researchers on the Meta side, where we have dramatically improved, things like division function inference, and are currently looking into split inference and the likes of combining MPC with TEs to find the right trade-off between security and performance. But yes, there's more work to be done on the cryptography side, but that's what we are here for, and I think that's an exciting future to look forward to, where you can actually do these things in a much more trustless environment than we have today.
Yeah. Totally agree. And Michael, you bring up important questions about scaling and viability of these things. I would say have a good handle on this. There's about 6 companies in the world, that are prominent, that are working on the problem of decentralized training. 3 of them are, in CoinFund's portfolio. Jensen just launched a piece of research today where you can now participate in a kind of global open network where you can use reinforcement learning to train a model. Obviously, Prime Intellect mentioned kind of their achievement has been a few models that are trained in a decentralized way using data parallel approaches. So this is like one approach to create like multi-party training, essentially. This approach has limitations because it requires that every node basically have a full copy of the model. So you can't scale it like terribly large, Michael, to your point. But what you need for 100 billion plus parameter things is you essentially need like linear scalability of training. So what that looks like is sharding the model across a network and coming up with an algorithm where the model can still converge despite all the limitations of that topology. So like slow interconnects, robustness, Byzantine attacks, all of this stuff. So what I can share with you is that I have strong confidence that that problem will be solved, and we will see networks that are essentially training open AI competitive large frontier models on, in a decentralized way. One of the best recent resources in this, if you listen to Alex Long, is the CEO of Pluralis. He just did a podcast with Sina Habibi and went very in depth on all this. Check it out.
I'm concerned about liability and reputation. I think that usually when something bad happens in crypto, there is at least a company that will be liable, or an individual if a certain jurisdiction can go after them. But with AI, I think that there's a few questions there to basically know who's going to be responsible if something bad happened. And I think we're not talking about that. We're excited about the future of this, and I'm also excited. I'm bullish, but yeah, soon I believe we're going to have issues, security issues, and then perhaps no one to respond on the other end.
Cool. I mean, I think we've spoken about, the technical aspects around this question, right? I think in crypto, we've made a lot of progresses around this topic. But one thing that gets brought up often, right, is the fact that Web2 companies are generally not as inviting around, crypto companies, right? And with something so big that has, potential security liabilities, et cetera, how do you guys see, traditional companies accepting all the work that you've been doing and also integrating it or even leveraging these data sets that you guys are working on?
I would say what will become very apparent probably this year as we head into some of the big AI conferences is that a lot of the work that's done on things like fields like decentralized training is actually like very relevant to AI at large, right? So if you're solving that problem, you're solving like, you're building algorithms for the robustness and fault tolerance of your network, which is an important issue even if you're training, on many machines in a centralized data center, because machines fail, right? And you need kind of algorithms to fail over. You don't want to have to start your training run all the way from the beginning. You're solving things like, can we train en masse on commodity hardware, which lowers the barrier to entry? You have countries out there that maybe can't afford high-end GPUs. We see DeepSeek starting to descend the curve of hardware by not training on the most, top-of-the-line hardware, but actually like a rung down. So can we get that down to, like fully commodity GPUs that are on, your MacBooks? We think we can. And there's a number of problems like Byzantine tolerance is actually also an issue in traditional AI world because of errors that occur across hundreds of thousands of machines when you're training and so forth. So they need to be corrected, they need to be discerned, etc. So what we're actually in is kind of a convergence between like Web 2 AI and Web 3 AI. I don't think Web 2 AI fully understands that yet, but they will very soon.
Yeah, I think it will come down to adding value and doing things that are better than the way we do it today. And that is a high-level way of putting it. But some examples, Ilya said last year that he thinks we're running out of data. Different opinions on that, whether that's the case or not. But I think overall, most people would agree that the speed of which we generate high-quality data in public forum that is usable for further training is reducing. There's an opportunity for, I think, decentralized setups that can tap into sensitive data, into private data, which is currently not used for training, to generate the next generation of frontier models and generate collective social intelligence. How valuable that data actually is and how the business model and monetization will look like, both from perspective from a user as well as from an enterprise, remains to be seen. But of course, there is an exciting potential scenario where we can actually create new high-quality data that we can use to train these models. That's the first point. I think the second point is around privacy, right, and security. So I do think there is big demand on the enterprise side, certainly already today, to think about how can we run these models in a more privacy-preserving environment, because they have to think about the risks of sending prompts in plain text to these big companies. And I think, like as I said, improvements like TEs and cryptography as well may at some point lead to them having to change their thought process and how they actually provide inference. And NVIDIA itself is actually generating the next level of GPUs with TE support, which is obviously supporting this development. So I would say that's a trend that we'll see. And yeah, anything else that crypto can do to change dynamics in terms of how ownership works, how verifiability can be done, and how privacy preservation looks like, can make a big impact in how bigger Web2 companies think about AI.
Yeah, I totally agree with all the points. I was on a panel earlier with the co-founder of Vana, and she quoted some interesting statistics, which I really liked, which is that the publicly available data is only 0.1% of all data available. And if you can actually tap into companies' data, which is the other 99% that's private, then you could potentially train significantly better models or more expert models that outperform what the current state-of-the-art models are. So really excited about Web3 being able to enable that type of future.
Yeah, I was going to talk about ban as well. I think that one thing that blockchains are really great at is basically as a coordination layer, aligning people who don't know each other to kind of like with the same goal. So I think that's like in terms of getting that data, I think that's where blockchain can actually help Web2 companies. And I believe that's going to be super valuable and the reason why it will come.
Okay, so I have a personal question. I'm not sure if it's fully related to direct projects, might be Porco projects, right? You said that we're currently at a convergence between Web2 and Web3 AI, right? And kind of going back to this topic, right, about, you know, bringing in new users or being more friendly towards either Web2 corporations or just traditional users, I think there's a big question around, you know, the accessibility and how easy it is for a normie user on, you know, the supply side, right? How can they get involved? What are some of the things you're implementing to make it as easy as possible for these users to be able to, let's say, plug in their data, right? I think crypto has a really high learning curve. So what are some of the things that are being done to make sure that, you know, you can get the supply as well?
I mean, from our perspective, Nillion builds infrastructure, right? So our user is a developer, and our challenge is how can we make sure that we remove friction as much as possible to build with privacy-enhancing technologies, because as of today, certainly in the cryptography side and also on the hardware side, it's not trivial, but certainly on the cryptography side, I mean, unless you have a couple of PhDs in this space, good luck in using these tools, right? And that needs to change, right? Because crypto is all about giving access, it's all about openness, it's all about composability, and you know, global permissionless access, and building these tools to democratize access for developers to trivially implement that in their end user applications is the focus on our side, right?
I mean, I think there are like some maybe consumer use cases for Web3 AI today. Like for example, Eric Voorhees' project Venice, you know, is trying to be like a ChatGPT kind of chatbot equivalent, and I'm sure it has some individual consumer users, are probably mostly like Web3 people, if I were to guess. But yeah, like to your point, I think most of the stuff is actually, right now, is actually like building the infra stack. And like if I take the perspective of people working on decentralized training, well, their goal is to make training a lot more accessible, like from a price perspective, from an access to resources perspective, from a, you know, like ease of being able to train or fine tune your own model as a corporation, perhaps, like perspective, as a data owner, you know, being able to kind of achieve your own model and have a business model around that. So it's what that infrastructure is really doing, you know, like all digital technology, it's lowering the barrier to entry. So if you're a scientist who wants to train a big model, you don't need to work at OpenAI to do that.
I was going to talk about Vana again. I think that their data DAOs are one of the first kind of like user-facing experiences that I have seen. They're cool. I think that they open the chance for like speculation on what I can do with my data. I've seen Twitter data, and we were in discussions for a lending and mobile money statements data DAO. I think that's fascinating. I think that like for the end user, it is kind of like a little bit of the taste of what could happen if they are the data owners. But they are far apart from like this type of conversations, right? Like it's hard to connect that with the AI model or whatever can be done with the AI model.
Cool. So I think one of my last questions, right, let me check time. I would say, do you guys believe that all data has to be put on chain? What's your take around this? I think it's something that we see, right? People say put everything on chain, right? What's your take with that?
Again, it depends on the layers of the stack, but just to clarify, so when we talk about decentralized AI, we are not talking about running these models on the blockchain. What we're talking about is off-chain computation, and then verifiably prove that certain things have happened, right? Because as of today, certainly blockchains are not purpose-built for running large language models, right? So unless you want to wait a couple of hours and pay a lot of money, it's certainly not viable. So I would say what needs to be on chain, payments, right? That's what blockchains are really good for. That's what they're purpose-built for. So in an agent economy where specialized agents talk to each other and work with each other, they need to find a way to pay each other. And I think there's a very strong argument to be made that global, credible neutral ledgers are a great fit for that because they don't shut down. They run 24/7. I think that's a very strong argument. The second thing is on chain. What we ideally want is some sort of cryptographically verifiable proof that somebody owns something, right? That could be data, it could be part of the model, so that in case of inference, when people actually use these models, payments can be distributed back to the owners of the data that has been contributed to train the model or the model itself. And last but not least, things like actually verifying, right, directly. So either posting zero knowledge proofs there, or in case of TEs, they run attestations, and then you can have a contract on chain that checks whether the hash matches their proved code, things like this that you could do in a verifiable manner. But yeah, when we talk about decentralized AI, we're not talking about running these models directly on the blockchain. That happens off-chain, and then it's all about verifiability and privacy.
I think the answer to your question is no, not all data should be on chain. I think the data should be on chain would be either public data. So this is data that is common knowledge, open science, open source, transparency for governments, putting U.S. Treasury payments on the blockchain for transparency, this kind of thing. Also, like public knowledge graphs might become a lot more relevant now. I think like the web was envisioned as a public knowledge graph at some point. Didn't really happen, but now with agents, it makes a lot of sense to put public knowledge on common open storage infra. The other kind of data that should go on chain is proprietary data that some owner wants to share with a more selective group of people, or maybe like monetize. So think about like companies that sell data and want to do that in a more automated, maybe even like intermediary-less way. And then private data doesn't need to go on chain. It can, there are solutions for that. But there's also probably like a large class of problems that you don't need a blockchain public consensus to solve. And so the private data of that class doesn't need to go on chain.
Well, from my perspective, if you stretch the definition of on-chain and you include decentralized storage, then yes, put it on chain, because it's 80% less and there's fault tolerance that's built in, 80% less in terms of cost. So it makes a lot of sense from an economic and just usability standpoint, especially if there's no trade-off in performance.
So I think that was my last question. If anyone in the crowd has questions, we can take them now. I guess we do have a couple extra minutes, so if you guys do want to say anything that you're really particularly excited about, that you're working on, about the future of AI, please.
This room should get more excited about AI, like Web3 AI. Let me give you some reasons. Most people, if they want to invest in frontier AI technology, such as a bunch that we mentioned today, decentralized training, inference, like decentralized storage networks, etc., they can't buy that stock in the stock market, and they can't invest in the latest private round of OpenAI or Anthropic or Perplexity. So most people, if they want financial access to invest in these things, they're going to go through crypto. Anyway, I'll just leave it there.
Well, we're particularly excited, especially as part of our ecosystem fund, at looking at agents that have a lot of utility. The reason why is if you're familiar with Kaito, for example, which is a way of monetizing attention, guess who the #1 influencer is on Kaito over the last year? Exactly, AI XPT. So that's not a human being anymore. And so this is only a taste of things to come. I think even Microsoft recently announced that they're going to start a wave of layoffs essentially and have AI agents that code be part of the mix in the future, I think within 2 years. And so we're really excited about looking at utility AI agents. Could be on, anything from legal paperwork to healthcare data to coding, whatever the applications are, even trading type of applications. So particularly interested in looking at all of that. Very exciting times.
Yeah, we'd love to see XPT's balance in terms of Kaito tokens. It's probably pretty impressive. But now I just want to build on that. So I think so far in crypto, when we talk about agents, what we've seen are, Twitter QLs, right? LLM wrappers that are grading content. Some of them are doing it exceptionally well. Most of them exceptionally bad, I would say, which is causing all sorts of other problems around noise. And again, proof of humanity. How do we make sure that we can sort of only have conversations we actually want to have and not get our replies botted? But what I'm really excited about is the next wave of agents. You touched on that, utility agents. I think we just opened the door of an incredible experimentation around how can you actually create value and make people more efficient, make their lives more efficient, productive, and more personalized. And the last point is particularly important, personalized. So think of agents that might scroll for your Telegram messages and identify where you might have to respond faster than others, and even have the ability to draft messages for you, right? That you can accept or reject. Or think of DAO governance, right? DAO governance is a lot, but what it certainly isn't today is autonomous. AI can be can add a big value to this, right? Because you could have your personalized agent that knows you, who you are, knows what you stand for, knows the sort of proposals you're in favor of, and it can deal with all sorts of things and asks you just for final approval to do certain things, which is much more efficient and effective. And again, needs privacy and blind computation to store that information, but also process that information effectively. So what I'm trying to get to is I think there's a huge opportunity for us as an industry to create tremendous value that goes beyond KOLs and specifically create that value in utility to make things more personalized, to make things more specialized, and to make things just more valuable.
Yeah, I'm also excited about proof of humanity. At Celo, we have 6 million users. I'm really excited to see how they react to agents and the use cases we can explore with that user base. Yep.
Cool. Thank you so much.